and he sees at what immortal looks like. Immortal looks called pastoral. You can do whatever you can or whatever you want to do in the next 5 minutes of your life at least. But these men and women are caged and trapped and chained, frozen in time. They cannot move. So, what is Keats doing here? He is graduating from this desire to achieve immortality to this understanding of what immortality means. Is he ready to pay the price? Hello and welcome back to nibblepop. The last video which we had done was on John Keats' poem Ode to a Nightingale. This video is going to be like a continuation where we are going to look at the Ode on a Grecian Urn by the same poet. I call this a continuation because somehow the questions raised by Keats in the poem Ode to a Nightingale, somehow those questions are taken to a different dimension in this poem, and maybe some new questions are raised and some new answers are found. So don't skip anything till the end because this is going to be a thorough reading, explanation of this whole poem, and special analysis of very important lines which will be handy for your exams as well. This is Monami Mukherjee. Welcome once again. As we were discussing the other day, Keats have had a very sad, although a dramatic life. I call it dramatic because his life was a kind of a roller coaster. He was a young and very accomplished writer, but doomed to die very young. He fell in love with a woman called Fanny Brown, but, well, he could not get her because of his disease and also because of the fact that being from a middle class family, he had to achieve quite a lot to be able to be in a position to propose to Fanny, whereas his very, very short lifetime did not give him that chance. Back in his days, in fact, Keats faced much ridicule from people around him. Maybe because of his humble birth. He was not a noble person like Wordsworth was. He was not an out-and-out rebel like Shelley was. Shelley was hated by his countrymen, yes. Keats was not hated. He was kind of ignored. And that is the irony, because if you count one of the 5 best poems, if you could count something like that, in the entire history of English language, well, you cannot miss this ode. Keats wrote this poem when he was diagnosed with his deadly disease, tuberculosis, consumption. And we know how that news affected him, how he was constantly, bothered about things like mortality, death, how to achieve some lasting impact, to go beyond your death in that way, to conquer death. We have seen these in other poems that we have done. But this poem is especially very, very important because here we see Keats not as a broken down person, confused like he was in Nightingale Ode. Here we see a person trying to find answers to his confusion. Now, as the title suggests, this is an ode. We know what an ode is. It's an impassioned address where you kind of try to elevate whoever you are addressing. It might be an object, it might be a person. You want to talk all good things about that person or thing. In case of romantic poets, we often have natural objects as subject of odes. Here in this poem, who is the subject of this ode? The subject is the Grecian urn. And what is a Grecian urn? Grecian is an adjective here and urn is the object. Urn is a special kind of vessel which is used for a specific purpose. When somebody dies and the body is cremated, burnt ritualistically, then the ashes are collected and stored in these urns. So that had been a ritual even in the past ages. It's still very popular now. And people kind of try to store the ashes of their loved ones as if they are storing their memory. Grecian means anything related to Greece. So, Grecian urn is an urn which is made in Greece. But how come an English poet is talking about a Grecian urn? Why is he doing that? Now, back during those days, there was a tendency especially in these European countries like England, to go and plunder the whole world rather. I mean, they used to take all these beautiful objects from around the world and place them in their museums. And this happened with some Greek artifacts too. So there was this Englishman who collected all these Greek special items. I wouldn't say collected, he rather plundered Greece in a way and brought these objects to the British Museum. Now, Keats, what he did, because like he was in a sad melancholic mood, and when you are a poet and somehow you want to spend time, you would rather spend time among works of art. Now, the special thing about these Grecian artifacts was that they were also very beautiful works of art. So there was a utilitarian side of an urn. I mean, you could store somebody's ashes in it, but it was also an object on which you could paint. So these Greek painters of ancient times, they made these beautiful urns, and one of these urns, it caught the attention of Keats. So this urn was placed in that museum. Keats went there, he sat there for hours and he looked at that urn, and as it turned, he looked at different sides of the same urn on which different pictures were, inscribed, you can say, painted. So this was not just an urn, this was, you can say, a small bit of Greece which he was seeing in front of him. And we know the kind of fascination that the Romantics felt for the Greek, for the classical. This is Hellenism I was talking about the other day. And when a poet or any writer writes at length on any work of art, there's a word to it. It's called Ecphrasis. I have made another video on Ecphrasis, and it is a very beautiful poem by W.H. Auden. If you know the name of the poem, write down in the comment section. What is the name of that poem which we can classify as Ecphrasis, which we have made a video on and is by W.H. Auden. Okay, so remember that this is an example of an Ecphrasis where a poet is writing at length on any work of art, which can be a painting. Here in this case, it's an urn. So just let's look at how this urn is described by Keats to us. Thou still unravished bride of quietness, thou foster child of silence and slow time, sylvan historian, who canst thus express a flowery tale more sweetly than our rhyme? What leaf-fringed legend haunts about thy shape, of deities or mortals or of both? He is beginning by addressing the urn directly. It's not like in Nightingale. In Nightingale, what he does, he talks about his heartache. My heart aches and a numbness is filling me up. That kind of a beginning. Here he directly addresses the urn. And how does he address the urn? He calls the urn unravished bride of quietness. Quietness means silence. So he looks at this vessel as something which is married to, or which is about to be married to, silence. So it's a bride. But what kind of a bride? Unravished. A bride whose marriage is not yet consummated, which means that there is an element of innocence, an element of chastity about this urn. Why chastity? Why purity? Because this urn is made of marble and marble is white. Now, in normal European consciousness, the color white is associated with purity, with pre fallen innocence. Therefore, this urn looks like a bride who has not yet been ravished. And then he calls it the foster child of silence and slow time. It's as if when silence and slow time, they are married, they are united, then they give birth to this kind of urn. Now, if we look at the word silence and slow time, neither of them are human, but they are kind of personified here. Why silence? Because, well, the work of art, it has no voice, it cannot speak. So it's a child of silence. So it's both a bride and a child of silence. And slow time means usually time has effect on a lot of things, especially on living things. But since this urn is not a living thing, therefore time does not have that kind of destructive impact on it. This urn was made, thousands of years back or hundreds of years back, but it is still there. So time for this urn is a slow one. Therefore, it is said that this urn is a child of slow time and silence, and not just a direct child, it's a foster child. So they are fostering it. Foster means when you don't give birth to somebody, but when you protect a child. So this urn is produced by a human being, by human hands. A human artist painted on it. But time and silence, they have kind of protected this urn so far as if it is their foster child. And then he calls the urn Sylvan historian. Who is a historian? Historian is somebody who records whatever has happened in the past. Why does he call the urn a historian? Because painted on the surface of the urn are stories which were a part of Greek civilization. So, looking at those paintings, we can get some idea about what kind of life people had, what kind of amusements they were engaged in or they engaged in. So, this kind of is a record. This is like a history book. But what does this word Sylvan historian mean? Usually, historians are academic people. They talk about kings and rulers and governments and wars. A Sylvan historian is somebody who talks about the history of the village, of the common people's life, of the natural surroundings. So, Sylvan means something which belongs to the world of nature, the agrarian society, the village life. So, this urn is depicting pictures not of warfare but of common man's life, especially people who live amidst nature. And then he says that you are a Sylvan historian and you can express a flowery tale more sweetly than our rhyme. It is a very common thing that poetry does. It expresses through rhyme different kinds of scenes in front of us. Like, all through our syllabus, we have seen poems describing to us different kinds of scenes. But this painting, or rather these sets of paintings around this urn, they present a more expressive kind of description, you can say. They are more expressive and they are more beautiful than any rhyme can be. And then he goes on to describe. First, he asks a certain set of questions looking at the pictures. So, through these questions, we will understand what those pictures are about. What leaf-fringed legend haunts about thy shape, of deities or mortals or of both? So there are pictures of human beings or maybe gods and goddesses, deities, like who look like human beings. So there are some human figurines painted on the urn. And what else? In Tempe or the Dales of Arcady, these are Greek territories, and because it's painted or crafted by a Greek artist, so of course these men and women, they belong to Greece. What men or gods are these? What maidens? Lot. So he can identify some men and some women, maidens, and they are lot. They are shy and not very energetic at this point because, of course, they are painted on the urn. What mad pursuit! So there is a scene where someone is chasing someone. So there is some mad pursuit, chasing wildly. What struggle to escape! Somebody is chasing someone and that someone is trying to escape. So by and by, Keats is trying to paint in front of us what that painter had painted on the urn. What pipes and timbrels. So he can also identify some musical instruments being played by some musicians. What wild ecstasy! And he can detect a lot of vibrance, a lot of energy in the people who are depicted on that urn. So, what was the first paragraph about? The first stanza was about this urn who looks like a historian to Keats because he feels that he can look at ancient Greece through the pictures that are painted, and then he gives us a hint of the kind of pictures he's seeing. There is a pursuit or a chase scene. There is a scene where people are playing on in certain musical instruments, and there are some maidens and some godlike human figures. So this is what he brings before us, and then in the next stanza he suddenly becomes more philosophical. Instead of directly describing the urn, he is giving his inputs here. And what does he say? Heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard are sweeter. What melody is he talking here about? He is talking here about the melodies from the musical instruments that are, played on that picture. He can see some people are playing on some pipes and timbrels. But since it's a picture, he cannot hear what they are playing. Now, because he cannot hear what they are playing and the painting is so beautiful, he can imagine what they are playing. And since we know for a romantic poet, anything which you reach through imagination is better than the real thing because the world of the ideal is always better than the real world. Therefore, this imagined music that he imagines being played by the musicians on the picture, that imagined music is better, sweeter than anything that can be heard by our real ears. Heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard are sweeter. Therefore, ye soft pipes play on. So he is urging those musicians to play on. What if he did not request them to play on? Will they stop playing? No, because these pictures will not change. They will remain what they are. And then he says, play on not to the sensual ear, because he cannot actually hear them, but more endeared, more dear to me. Why more endeared? Pipe to the spirit, ditties of no tone. Pipe here is the verb of the sentence. So he is asking the musicians to pipe, which is to play on the pipe, ditties of no tone, which means there will be music, but there will be no sound because it's again played by these musicians who are painted on the urn. And then he shifts on to a different scene. Same urn, just turning. Maybe it's turned by some automatic way, or maybe he's turning it by his hand. That's not very important. What's important is the urn is turned and he looks at a different picture on the same urn. And there he sees, fair youth, beneath the trees thou canst not leave thy song, nor ever can those trees be bare. Bold lover, never, never canst thou kiss, though winning near the goal, yet do not grieve. She cannot fade, though thou hast not thy bliss, forever wilt thou love and she be fair. He's obviously talking about a couple in love here. They are under a tree, and this man, this young man, is trying to kiss his beloved. But the most important word here is about to. He is about to kiss the beloved. So the kissing is not accomplished. And the painter, he has painted them in a moment when he has not touched her yet with his lips. And painfully, he will never be able to do that. So he is saying, never, never canst thou kiss, though winning near the goal. So you are very near your target. You want to kiss your girl is with you. You are almost there, but you cannot kiss her right now or ever. And at the same time, a couple of lines before this, he says, thou canst not leave thy song. You can't even stop singing. When we sing because we are happy or we are melancholic or for whatever reason. But suppose you are cursed with something like you cannot stop singing. That will be a curse. Then singing won't be that nice to us if we are ordered to sing forever. Think about it. So this young man, he cannot stop singing. He cannot reach his beloved. No matter how close he is, he cannot kiss her. And then Keats gives a consolation to him. He says, do not grieve. She cannot fade. At least you are sure that my girl will always be there. She'll not go away. She cannot fade. Why is he saying this? Because in his life, he has seen that no matter how deeply you love someone, that person can simply fade away. Because life doesn't give you this kind of guarantee, this kind of permanence, which this artist has given this lover. So he is saying that she will not fade away. Though thou hast not thy bliss, you don't have the happiness of getting her completely. Forever will thou love, and she be fair. So this whole obsession of a person with idea of beauty fading away, of love fading away, those ideas are completely destroyed here. Because a girl painted on this urn, she will be forever the same, and her lover will feel the same kind of love for her, because change is something which is not allowed to these characters. Ah, happy, happy boughs that cannot shed your leaves, nor ever bid the spring adieu. So he looks at the trees painted there, and just like the human beings painted there, these trees are also blessed with eternal spring. They will never shed their leaves. They will never say goodbye to spring. Adieu means goodbye. We have seen this word in Nightingale too. And happy melodist, unwearied. The person who is playing on these instruments, he is unwearied. He is not tired because this is his destiny. He has to go on playing. Forever piping songs, forever new. So these songs will forever be played. More happy love, more happy, happy love. Note the number of times he uses this word happy. Already he has used it for like 5 times and twice as repetitive, emphasized expressions. Happy, happy vows, happy, happy love. So happiness is something he can see reflected on those faces drawn across the urn. Happy, happy love, forever warm and still to be enjoyed. Something which is not yet enjoyed, because as I have told you, that man has not yet kissed the woman. So it is love, it is consummation, it is union, which is still to be enjoyed. It's like when we have something grand which is going to happen in our lives, maybe our wedding or maybe a grand birthday we have planned or our parents have planned for us, anything that we're looking forward to. Just the moment before that event happens, we are supposed to be the happiest. Think about these annual grand festivals: Christmas, Durga Puja, Holi, Eid. We are happiest right before it starts, and then it all happens so fast, and then we are left with the feeling that, okay, we have to wait for another year for this kind of happiness. So maybe real happiness comes not at the moment of getting something, but just, few milliseconds before that moment starts. And that is something which the artist has captured. Because once you reach that happy moment, maybe you realize that whatever you were dreaming about, imagining, the reality is not that grand. Forever panting and forever young, all breathing human passion far above whatever we experience in our real life with our real human passion, our breath. That is far below what happiness this urn depicts, because the happiness depicted on the urn, painted on the urn, has a permanent value. It does not have any fear of losing that moment. We are often sad when we are happy because we know in those happy moments that this moment is going to go away. Again, that Shelley's immortal line: sweetest songs are those that tell of saddest thought. So even in our happiest moments, we might be melancholic, thinking about the fact that this moment is going to go away. All breathing human passion far above, that leaves a heart high, sorrowful, and cloyed, a burning forehead, and a parching tongue. How is human life described by Keats? On one hand, he's describing the urn as a pristine paradise of happiness, and on the other hand, when he's coming to human life, he's talking about burning forehead, parching tongue. These are symptoms which he probably was feeling because of his disease, and at the same time, these are symptoms we all feel all the time: the anxiety, the fret, the fever, the loneliness of being human, of being alive. This is real life. And that urn, although it depicts human beings, although it depicts things which we actually see in real lives, but it still depicts a different kind of reality. And then he describes the next scene, the third scene here. Who are these coming to the sacrifice? So notice that he is constantly asking questions. Earlier, he was saying that what men or gods are these, what maidens sloth, and so on. And now he is asking, who are these people who are coming to the sacrifice? What is a sacrifice? Now, during the springtime, the Greeks, since they were pagan people, they used to go on these processions, take an animal with them, usually a cow, and then go on to this temple of their chosen gods or goddesses and sacrifice that animal as a part of the spring festivals. So the scene depicted and described here is one of such processions where a group of people are coming down and there's a cow with them, a heifer with them. Who are these coming to the sacrifice? To what green altar, O mysterious priest, leadest thou that heifer lowing at the skies? Altar is a place where you put your gods or goddess and pray. Why is he calling it a green altar? Because, as I have told you just moments back, the Greeks were pagan people. So they were like nature worshippers. And usually their gods and goddesses were symbolic representations of natural objects, the plants, the sun, the moon, and therefore their altars or their place of worship is called a green altar because it's a pagan altar. And a heifer is taken there, a cow is taken there to be sacrificed, and a priest, mysterious priest, because nobody knows what kind of religion he is following or what are his instructions. Nobody knows the details of the rituals. So there's an air of mystery about the ritual which they are going to participate in. So, mysterious priest, he is leading these people and he's leading a cow, and the cow is lowing at the skies. Lowing means making that sound, and it's a soft mooing sound that the cow makes. And since it's a procession of people, they are in a very celebratory mood. Uh, and at the same time, there is this hint of sadness when you think about that cow, that okay, it's going to be sacrificed. And it's also ironic because they are going to please the god of nature by offering an object of nature. So that is how sacrificial rituals they work, and that's the same thing happening here. And all her silken flanks with garlands dressed. Now that's also a very common thing with sacrificial animals. When an animal is chosen to be sacrificed to the gods, usually people put on a lot of garlands. Okay, and it's a common sight. But Keats is not that worried about this procession. He's looking at the picture of the procession, but he's thinking about something else. What else? What little town by river or seashore or mountain built with peaceful citadel is emptied of this folk, this pious morn? What he's thinking is, these people have come down, like they're coming in a procession, going towards a temple. So they are outside the fringes of their city or town or village. So what about that town now? It's totally empty. It's such a grand festival. Everybody in the village must have felt the urge to come and join the procession. So obviously there is nobody left in the town at this moment when this procession is outside the village. And then he is trying to guess what kind of village, what kind of town that be. And he says, what little town by river or seashore. So he doesn't know what kind of home these people have who are now walking in this procession, walking in this, celebration. But he can only guess. Earlier, he said that there was music being played, which he cannot hear. He can only imagine, and therefore it is sweet. Now he is going a step further. The artist has not painted any town or village. He has simply painted a procession. Keats is so much capable of going beyond the picture that he is imagining that there is a town or a village from where these people have come. And that town or village is now empty because these people cannot go back because they are frozen on that urn. And little town, I was thinking about that town, which is not painted on the urn. And little town, thy streets forevermore will silent be, and not a soul to tell why thou art desolate can ever return. So these people, no one can return from this procession. So is this scene painted on the urn a scene of happiness, a scene of, gathering together, or a scene of loneliness? The loneliness of the town is as much real as the celebration of the crowd. This is the duality. So every happy picture presents a contrary state. We will talk about these contrary states someday when we will talking about Blake, perhaps, if we can manage that. But this is also a kind of statement where he's saying that whatever sight I'm seeing in front of me hides another sight which I cannot see. I can only guess. And then he directly addresses the urn. Now, not the picture, but the urn itself. Oh, Attic shape. Attic means something, ancient Greek shape in that way, an Attic shape. Fair attitude. With braid of marble men and maidens overwrought. So you are all decorated with so many beautiful looking men and maidens. With forest branches and the trodden weed, the grassland painted on that urn, they are trodden, which means people have walked over it. Of course, there's a procession being painted, so it's trodden weed. Thou silent form dost tease us out of thought, as doth eternity. So the more I look at you, the more I feel overwhelmed by thought. We can see that, the kind of thought that this urn is capable of producing in Keats. How many times have we looked at paintings or decorated art pieces? I don't remember any time being teased out of my thought. I appreciate the beauty, but I do not have that kind of sight which Keats has. No. So maybe it's not the urn which has teased him out of his thought, it's his capability of his thought to tease him out of itself. The urn is a historian, not to everybody. It is a historian to somebody who knows how to read the history book called art. And then he makes a very important, statement, and I would rather say it's epiphanic, a sudden realization. Cold pastoral. Pastoral means something which is a scene of greenery, of fields and forests and warmth. That is a pastoral scene. You know, farmers working, and then sheep all around, happy rural scene full of warmth of the sun. That is a pastoral scene. And he is using the adjective cold with the word pastoral. Why is the urn referred to as cold pastoral? Pastoral because the pictures painted on the urn, they belong to a pastoral world. They belong to the world of the greenery, pasture. Cold because, on one hand, it's marble and marble is cold. Secondly, it's cold because although it depicts picture of life or alive human beings, in reality, there is no life in it. It's cold. It's lifeless. And it's also cold because it won't change. It's frozen like ice. We also associate coldness with silence. So we have multiple interpretations of the word cold in this expression, cold pastoral. But all these interpretations, they refer to one thing, that this urn is non-human. Whatever is painted on the urn does not give you the feeling or the essence of life as we live it. So it is cold pastoral. So is that a plus point of the urn or a negative thing about it? First, he tries to look at the plus side. What is the plus side of being a cold pastoral? When old age shall this generation waste. He's always talking about the word generation. He's kind of fed up with people, it seems, because he is heavily underappreciated. Nobody understands what he's trying to do with poetry. And he does not have the kind of time to prove that he's doing something remarkable. So he doesn't know that he will be so famous so many years after his death. So at this moment, he is not very happy with the people around him, and he thinks that this generation is going to waste itself. Whoever I know now is going to die. Not just me, everybody around me is going to die. Thou shall remain. So the plus point of being cold pastoral is you stay, if not exactly forever, because yes, the urn will also be eventually destroyed, but compared to human lives, it has a greater longevity, a greater lifetime, far greater. Thou shalt remain in midst of other woe than ours. Maybe other people will look at you. They will have other kinds of sadness. Like I have certain kind of sadness, I'm looking at you. I will die and then some other person will come, the next generation. They will also look at you. They will have different kinds of sufferings, different kinds of woe. A friend to man to whom thou sayest, and to those people too you will say something. And what will the urn say? Or what is the urn saying? Beauty is truth, truth beauty. That is all you know on earth and all you need to know. the poem ends with this message from the urn. The first line of the poem presented the urn as bride of quietness. And then we saw that the urn is not capable of much sound, it is associated with silence. But at the end of it, Keats is saying that the urn is speaking and actually giving a philosophical thought. So, what is the urn? Is it silent or is it capable of speech? Now, this is the paradox which we see in this poem. This poem is about this paradox. What is art? Is art something silent and permanent? Or is it capable of expressing something? Because if you are a historian, then we cannot call you silent because you are speaking, you are telling stories about the past. So, one way of looking at this expression at the end is that despite being otherwise considered to be dead and cold, any work of art can become a speaker, animated, expressive. Because human beings will die, but art has a greater longevity. And therefore, whatever stories are expressed through art, whatever images are captured in art, they have a more lasting effect. They have a more expanded life than the people on whom they are based. Now let's come to this quote. What is the meaning of it? Beauty is truth, truth, beauty. Taken literally, it means whatever is beautiful is truthful and whatever is truthful is beautiful. Didn't Shakespeare say something like, fair is foul and foul is fair in Macbeth? Or weren't we warned by so many Aesop's fables or stories from Arabian Nights that whatever looks beautiful must contain something deadly and often is a host of lies? Or are we to believe naively that whatever we find beautiful is telling you the truth? Then what about the expression called the bitter truth, the ugly truth? We use those expressions with truth. So if we say ugly truth, how can we say beauty is truth, truth, beauty? Maybe we are making a little bit of a mistake here. He's not talking about beautiful thing. The earth is not saying beautiful thing is a truthful thing or truthful thing is a beautiful thing. The earth is saying beauty is truth, truth, beauty. If you remember our discussion on Plato and his idea of forms, you would remember that Plato clearly gave this idea that there's this world of the ideal or the world of everything perfect, which we cannot reach through our sensory experience. And there is this world of objects, which we can see, touch, feel, experience with our five senses. So the things which we can sense with our experience, they are transient, temporary, things like a colorful object whose color may fade, a beautiful woman whose beauty might go, a white dress which might get stained. But there are these forms or ideas called whiteness, beauty, truth, things which exist in our ideas as concepts. Concepts cannot fade away, concepts cannot get corrupted. The idea of truth will always be true. The idea of beauty will always be beauty. So there is an element of permanence in the word concept of beauty, concept of truth. Okay. And in that world of forms or world of ideas, beauty, truth, eternity, divinity, humanity, all these things are almost interchangeable. This urn is a work of art. Of course, you can experience it with your five senses. At least you can see it, you can touch it, you can feel its coldness. So you would say that this work of art does not belong to the world of the ideal. Very true. This work of art, this urn, it will be destroyed eventually. So, yes, this does not belong to the world of the ideal, but the kind of idea that is inscribed on those paintings, the kind of feelings that are being generated when you look at those pictures, those ideas are, you can say, immortal. So, art has the capability, or rather, a work of art has the capability of going beyond the level of object to the level of idea. Similarly, poetry has this capability of elevating itself. Keats is asking a lot of questions here. Whom is he asking these questions to? To the person who painted on this urn. He is asking this question or these sets of questions to that painter who had painted on this urn hundreds of years back. Is he alive then? No, he wasn't alive. Is Keats alive now? No, Keats is not alive. But through Keats's words, Keats is alive. And through Keats's words, that unnamed painter also gets a kind of life, doesn't he? So just like the urn is a sylvan historian, Keats's poetry is a different kind of history. It gives us a glimpse into the 19th century England, where people's love for these, Hellenic things, these Greek things, and their fascination for these romantic stories, these paintings, this comes alive. And not just a historian, Keats's poetry becomes philosophy. The urn tells him that beauty is truth, truth, beauty. This is all you need to know, and this is all you can know, which means this is the realization that don't feel sad about whatever beauty, whatever health, whatever happiness you're losing, because you are losing them on the level of objects, on the level of this permanent ideal world. You lose nothing. So whatever you're losing, this loss is also temporary, because in this real life, beauty, truth, they are not achievable in totality. Once you realize that, you will stop expecting beautiful things to be truthful. You will stop expecting truthful things to be beautiful, because you know that in real life, you never get things in totality. And talking about contradictions, just think about this thing. Yes, this statement is contradictory. Beauty is truth, truth, beauty. Isn't the urn contradictory? It's supposed to hold ashes of the dead, and it's holding pictures of the living. So, what does it represent? It is a symbol of death, coldness, or is it a symbol of pastoral warmth and happiness and love and union? What is it? It is a statement that within that ideal world, contraries are assimilated, sorted. So it stands for both life and death at the same time. And therefore, when it is said that beauty is truth, truth, beauty, he's not talking about particular objects. He's talking about abstract things, abstract ideas, concepts, where there is no contradiction between beauty and truth, where there is no contradiction between life and death, because everything exists in totality in the world of the imagination. So, how do we place this ode as a continuation of Nightingale? What was the question he asked in Nightingale? What was his problem there? He wanted to achieve immortality, right? Because he was clearly pretty envious when he was saying, "Thou was not born for death, immortal bird, no hungry generation straight thee down," which means that I want to become like you, I want to become immortal. And then he said that, no, it's not possible for me. Wine cannot make that happen for me. Poetry cannot make that happen for me. So how to become immortal? And then he comes to Grecian Urn and he sees at what immortal looks like. Immortal looks cold pastoral. Immortality has a high price to pay. What price? Now, apparently, when he's describing these pictures, he's saying what? Forever piping songs, forever warm and still to be enjoyed, forever panting, forever young, forever. As if these men and women painted on the urn, they have conquered time because time cannot change them. Think about it. Have they conquered time, or are they the biggest prisoners, the worst prisoners of time? Because I can move anywhere I want in the next second of my life. You can do whatever you can or whatever you want to do in the next 5 minutes of your life at least. But these men and women are caged and trapped and chained, frozen in time. They cannot move. Would you like that kind of permanence? I wouldn't. Somehow there is this realization that maybe immortality is not something that we really should bother about. So, what is Keats doing here? He is graduating from this desire to achieve immortality to this understanding of what immortality means. Is he ready to pay the price? He knows that he cannot get Fanny Brown in his life. He knows. But there is a possibility that he will be able to kiss her at least, unlike this man looking so very happy, so very, confident of his love. That man under the tree won't be able to kiss his beloved, 100% sure. He might have that chance. So mortality gives you chance. Immortality takes away that element of change, the only element which makes life worth living. Keats desires to leave an impact. He knows that art is the way to continue. He knows the price that he's going to pay to achieve immortality. So he doesn't look for immortality anymore, perhaps. He looks for truth. And he's not an artist in the sense that he doesn't paint pictures, but he is an artist because he's a poet. So just like Coleridge painted that dome with his words, and we could see that dome, Keats has painted in front of us this urn, which we can visualize through his words. So this poem is an entry point into a different kind of inquiry. If not immortality, then what? What could make things feel better? Because Keats was feeling very, very low. His question will be finally resolved in the ode to autumn. We will take up to autumn right after this poem, because unless we read to autumn, we will not have this closure what that young man felt. So if you want that closure, if you want to know how Keats managed to reach at least a semblance of balance, then you will definitely join me in the next video, no matter what your syllabus is. Because hey, Keats deserves more than what your syllabus dictates. Give this young man more time than your syllabus asks you to. This is how we can make him truly relevant even today. So I am 100% sure I'm going to see you all again in the next video on 2 Autumn. Very short poem, so it will be a shorter video. So till then, stay connected, stay subscribed. This is Monami Mukherjee signing off. Stay happy, stay safe.